I made that several months
a few
ago
minutes
before we
or
decided.
a few seconds. I'm going to pass around an fall foliage Terry Tour sign up. I always feel like that you must think I'm trying to strong arm you. And I'm not. I mean, we always enjoy it if you want to go, but if you cannot go and you don't want to go, why you don't have to apologize for that. But the reason I'm trying to get a sign up is when you take trips like this and you have 20 or so people and you're going to eat somewhere that you usually have to give them a heads up almost always to let them know that you're coming. So look it over, and some of that is a little bit tentative. I haven't really cleared. I thought we would stop by. It's right on the way that we can go to Elwood and Alice Jean Stone's village. And when Jeannie and I and Mark visited there not too long ago, there's a way that you can all walk right up to their back window. So rather than all of our group going in to see them, I thought we would just tell Alice Jean, hey, plant Elwood beside the back window, and we'll be there at 9:30, and we're going to sing I Love You with the Love of the Lord or something. And then move on. You know, just sing and wave and go on our merry way. That may not come to fruition if Alice Jean says he doesn't wake up till 11 or something. So. We left off last week talking about adaptability, and I used that thought to expand upon Proverbs 22 and verse 6, which is that old passage that has, we've all, I think over the years, if we've been church connected much at all, we're well familiar with the word, and it says basically, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And of course, the general understanding of this verse is keep the Word of God front and center in the life of your child. And I'm not going to argue with that premise. But I'm wondering, based on the literal rendition of this text, my translation, the New American Standard, which is a pretty reliable one, reads it, train up a child in his own way. Is that the way it says it, Vic? According to his own way. So I'm not going to rehearse all of last week. Perhaps we sparked a little measure of controversy. It's not a big deal if it is, but I'm thinking that verse may very well lend itself to the idea of trying to raise a child by getting into that little boy or little girl's head and figuring out what exactly makes them tick in terms of incentives, in terms of positive reinforcement, and also in terms of negatives like discipline and punishment and so forth. Because every child's different. So all that lesson was about last week was really the idea of tailor-making child rearing. We sometimes make the great mistake of thinking what works for one child will work for every child. If you are parents of more than one child, you know that's not always the case. Now, we left off last week, and I had a typo in our notes, and it says Proverbs 19, verse 15 at the bottom of those notes. It really should have said Proverbs 29 and verse 15. So would you read Proverbs 29 verse 15? Because that kind of puts the lesson last week in a little bit of a perspective. What does it say? We're not trying to say at all that we let our kid go on its own. When we say according to his own way, we're not saying spoil the child rotten. So what does 29:15 say?
A rod and a reprimand impart wisdom, but a child left undisciplined disgraces his mother.
A child left undisciplined, and probably older translations would say, a child left to his own brings shame to his mother. So we're not trying to say, let your kid do whatever he wants. We're trying to say, in the realm of adaptability, you as a parent are charged with trying to raise that child in the best way you can. And I know that we're not a bunch of geniuses, that we all need help, and one way we learn is trial and error. So what we're trying to do is find out what makes this little child tick and do the best we can according to their own personality. And, Nick and Chris have illustrated how what worked maybe as punishment for Nick did not even penetrate Chris's stubborn will or hard head or whatever you might say. And there might have been things that really touched Chris that didn't faze Nick. So the difference between children, you all know that. Now, what I want to do today is let's go to another idea. I wanted to, and I beg you, anybody, if you're ready to lecture us on how to raise teenagers, and we got no takers, and I really started on my lesson with that, trying to put some thoughts together. And then I thought, no, I want to back up a little bit, and it almost seems like I'm making a pun out of today's study. But I want to talk a little bit here about the hurried child. And two of my major resources for this is a book by that title, David Alkine. Really very impressive work. It gets a little bit into the details at times, but I think if you bear with us, you'll catch the drift of what we're trying to say here. The other is a book written by Neil Postman, which I don't have, but wish I did have, but I have a pretty thorough review of the book, and it's called The Disappearance of Childhood. So lest we speed into adolescence too soon, let's just pause here this morning and think about, is it possible that we could be rushing our kids along too quickly? On the back of today's notes, there's a little poem of sorts by Irma Bombeck. Those of you that have already raised your kids, you probably want to wait until later on to read it. Might bring a little tear to your eye, I don't know. Haley, I don't know how it would impact you. You might read it and say, oh no, I can't wait till they get out of the house. But we all know those years go so quickly. And the next thing you know, that little toddler is getting on the school bus, and then that little kindergartner's going into junior high and high school and then off to college or wherever. And it happens so quickly, and sometimes we say, how did it happen? And so what I want to talk about today is to borrow from Alkine's idea here, and let's think if there's, maybe this is much ado about nothing, I don't know. Let's start with the introduction. Alkine argues that we are putting undue pressure, and I think unwittingly, he's not saying we're doing it on purpose, but we're putting undue pressure on our children by requiring them to grow up too quickly. Now, on the one hand, we just talked about how we want to keep them and hold on to them, but over the last few decades, several decades now, doctors have noticed that children are expressing symptoms of stress. And typically, over the years, stress has been predominantly an adult problem. So what some psychologists have concluded is that the reason there's a lot more stress in children today is because we are putting a lot on them. Now, I want to preface this because I feel a little uncomfortable. I feel like a fish out of water. I'm not really gifted in this area, especially not having children and then not specializing in any of these studies. So I'm not trying to discourage that we try our best to raise children who are excellent. And what I mean by excellent is how wonderful to have a child in school that makes the honor roll every time it comes around. And even maybe a child that graduates as a valedictorian or a salutatorian and does so well on the scores and maybe gets a big scholarship to college and all that. I'm not at all trying to discourage parents from telling their kids, hey, your grades count. You know, that's important to you. And likewise, I'm not down on an emphasis on sports. But I think the point I'm trying to make, and maybe we can see it in the sports world even more so than we can in academics, because the academics maybe get started a little bit later, but I'll use this illustration to try to get to the point I'm making. Sometime this past summer, I was listening to one of the Indians games, and Tom Hamilton, who has a son that played, I think, maybe at Kent State, and they ended up being in some tournaments. Maybe you know about that man, I don't know. But he plays ball, and so Tom Hamilton, somehow there was this, they got into the discussion as they were broadcasting one of the Indians games about, and Tom Hamilton is not shy about just telling you how he feels. You know, if an umpire's not calling the strikes, to say, you know, the guy's blind or something, you know. Or sometimes he'll be a little bit more discreet, like, you have umpires that really let you know when it's straight, hand signals and voice and all that, and then you have some umpires that they have to sit up in the booth and say, was that a ball or a strike? And every once in a while they'll get aggravated and say, it would really be nice if we could have a signal call, you know, sometime in the next 10 minutes, after the 10 seconds after the pitch. But anyway, Tom Hamilton was talking about parents that the incidence of Tommy John surgery among young athletes, young pitchers. Dan, I don't know if you've experienced this any in your all of your life, training and being a coach and all that. But his point was that some parents get this notion that when their 8-year-olds gets out there and starts throwing, and all of a sudden he's like he's a good pitcher, they all of a sudden want to mold him into a Cy Young winner. Some of you women, Cy Young is the award that's given to the best pitcher in baseball in both leagues. And Tommy John surgery was actually the pitcher for the Indians years ago. He messed up his arm, and somebody did surgery on him, and it totally allowed him to come back and pitch more. And now that surgery's done a lot, and it really has been the salvation of a lot of pitchers who have blown out their arms. But Hamilton's point was simply that let your kids be kids. He was talking about some kids, as soon as a child shows a little excellence, okay, then we're not going to let him play basketball or volleyball or golf or anything. We're honing him now for pitching. And we're going to do everything in our power for this little guy to grow up and be Corey Kluber Part 2. And Tom Hamilton's point, he didn't say it just that way, but his point is, let your kid be a kid. And he was even saying, let your kid develop all of his muscles. Don't take an 8-year-old and say, all you're going to do is be a fireball pitcher from here on out. Let him do all the sports that he might want to do. not only in an organized fashion, but fun and games around the house that develop a child normally. So I'm using that to illustrate how sometimes we have gotten into this mold where we have got to make our kids great. And it can be in the academic. Have any of you ever really been around? Our congregation's not too big here, and I think I would know about it if it was, but maybe you have things that go out to areas that I don't know. Anybody have a family that has a child prodigy? What do I mean by a child prodigy? Some kid that has gifts, whether they're academic or musical. What's that?
We all think we do.
Well, okay, that's a good point to make. And maybe we all wish we had one of those, but I'm wondering if we really do. I wonder if we could do, if there's ever been any definitive studies of children who have been put almost in a bubble because of their academic prowess at a young age, or some young child who has gone, I think, and I'm not bringing up any of the sexual misabuse of some of these young girls, I'm not trying to factor in that, but just the idea of you've got a little ballerina girl who is wanting to be a gymnast because she just watched the Winter Olympics, and almost immediately her parents start grooming her. And she's sent off to special schools. In fact, she doesn't go to school. She's tutored, kind of a thing. And for the next 5-10 years of her life, it's a totally secluded world. It's a different world from an average child, because she has shown the potential of being a girl that can be on the United States Gymnastics Olympics team, kind of a thing. So I don't know that we've ever had any, have any of us have that, or have any of us had this, I'm not just saying a child that we think is really bright, but a child that others have acclaimed this, you have here a little Einstein, or you have, that has a little bit of a proven track record. I mean, it's not just mom and dad kind of sitting back and just saying, boy, look what we've produced. But it's actually starting to get demonstrable results. Everybody in school is saying, this child, you need to think about a different child, a different school for this kid, and it's probably not going to be here in the U.S., it's probably going to be somewhere else. Have any of us had that kind of experience? All right, so I'm not saying that to let us off the hook, but I'm just saying that's the world that I'm sometimes trying to think about here. Somebody who wants their child to do so well academically that they almost warp the child by the rigor and routine of study that they then place upon them. Or same thing in the academic world, or some other realm. I've mentioned here different things that I think sometimes our kids are moved along quicker than we would like because of the infiltration of effects or factors that we are not necessarily in approval of, like the media, and we could break that down to a bunch of subcategories. Vic, your comment, and then I'll go on.
Oh, well, I used to be the teen minister at Cortland Road. One of our teens, he excelled in sports, he excelled in academics. And you thought, well, this young man's got a lot going for him and everything, and he was being pushed because of how good they thought his potential was. Here, he was all the time under extreme stress and wasn't telling anybody about the stress that put him under, where he even reached the point where he's considering suicide.
Well, now that illustrates the point I'm making here, that sometimes we put so much undue pressure on a child that it can not only lead to warping them, but it can drive them to sometimes young children, because they excel, they almost get treated like adults. And then there are problems when they think, well, why don't I have adult privileges? If I'm as smart as all the adults around me, why can't I do what adults do? And you can see the trickle-down effect, how that might impact. But I'm thinking now about how electronics has invaded the world of our children in ways that are sometimes scary when you think about it. We used to, I don't think it was ever really there, except maybe the idea that was in our parents' minds, that we could protect our kids from all the evil out there and, insulate them from the bad things. Every once in a while, I use a phrase, and I don't think about them too much. I would never use them in public, and I'm not meaning to imply that I'm behaving intentionally, hypocritically, or duplicitous, but they're phrases that somehow come up, or expressions that come up from some of my childhood. And Jeannie will say, where did you get that from? Where did you learn? Because she knows, she doesn't think my parents okayed it. And the other day she asked me something, and I'm not going to tell you what I said. It's not terrible, but it's really not very politically correct at all in our world today. But she said, where did you get that from? And I said, I think I got it from Steve Boomer. And he was a kid about 3 or 4 years my elder that lived across the street. And he was terrible. Talk about streetwise and all kind of language. All right, so we might think we insulate, but now with the internet and with smartphones, we're jumping all around here today. What's the age when you think, if you're the head of the house, and let's make it a husband and wife thing, at what age, now maybe you say, well, we'll have to wait and see how things go. What age do you allow your child to get permission to be online without oversight? Some of you would say never.
One of the problems is the world puts pressure on these kids. You have to have a phone.
Yeah.
We all grew up, we didn't have phones to carry around. You didn't have an extension cord that long. But, so the teens have to have it. Then you have the younger siblings.
Yeah.
They want one. I mean, I see kids 10 years old sitting all by themselves, and you have no idea what they're doing. And a lot of parents say, well, he's entertaining himself, so I'm just going to leave him alone. Not knowing what that kid is actually doing on the internet. And you're given an adolescent who hasn't developed himself yet a whole world.
All right, now Vic, you've shown some real insight there on a couple levels, but that last expression, you've given an adolescent, or even in the case sometimes a pre-adolescent. And as I'm saying in the beginning of our notes, we often see this hurried child syndrome as it impacts what we call the tweeners. And the tweeners are those that are between being young kids and being adolescents. They have not entered puberty yet. They're not in the adolescent world or the early teenage years. They're in between, but they're kind of teenage wannabes in many respects. they're not little kids, so the parents think, well, they're not kids anymore. So, okay, on the one hand, we're talking about the struggle here is when do we know to push our child, and when do we know when to relax? That's the hurry child issue that's before us. Sometimes, like the title of Vic's sermon a couple of weeks ago, we wonder, okay, we're going to give Johnny a pat on the back, but sometimes Johnny needs a kick in the pants. He really needs to be incentivized, and even maybe a threat of punishment. We know that he's quite capable of being a good, solid B student, and he's coming home with C minuses that are flirting with D's. So sometimes you got to push, but sometimes, who says that your little kids have to be straight A students all the time? And who says that they have to excel at every sport they try out for? And the point I'm trying to make here is that sometimes then we have these little tweeners. What would be the age of tweeners? 10, 11, 9? We have these kids that their lives are already starting to be so regimented. It's almost like, well, a daytimer this is so obsolete. The girl that cuts my hair, she marvels, she thinks I'm a real whiz, and she has no idea. Because I stand there and I say, okay, let's go ahead and schedule for next month. And she'll give me a date, and I say, okay, I got it. And she'll say, it's November 3rd at noon or whatever. And I say, I got it. She says, Terry, you need a card? And I say, no, I don't need it. And she says, man, what a memory. She has no idea that I'm going right out to my car and I'm opening up my day timer. I just let her go on thinking I'm smart. Then I open my day timer and I not only write it on the month section, but then at the end of October, where the month I change day timers, I write at the very bottom, get a haircut on 11/15 at noon. This is an obsolete thing, but it works for me. A lot of people use their phones. But to have to do that for a child, to have to be so regimented that every hour of their day, I guess, and again, I'm not touting that we just let our kids drift and be whatever they are going to be, because a lot of children really need to be incentivized, and they need guidance and steering, and hopefully they're getting a bunch of that at school. But I'm just trying to throw in the idea here of, could it be that we've started to try to regiment childhood more than God ever intended it to be? And I'll open again, or it's not opening anymore, but I'll refer you back to some of our opening comments or comments somewhere here. Look at things that speed up the growth process. At the very end of that, just above consequences of intensified growth, Elkine notes that your brain and your body can be manipulated to excel beyond what's normal. But feelings, and Vic hinted on this a minute ago, feelings and emotions have their own timing and rhythm and cannot be hurried. So the point being, we can get these little smart kids and these little athletic excellers, but if we steal them of that important time period of developing in a natural way, they really may grow up to not be all that we want them to be. All right, I saw some hands there, and again, I need help here because I'm in a realm that I'm not sure about, but I'm reading from somebody that I think is really on to something here, and I would encourage us all to think about this. There are all kind of discussions about when did childhood come into being anyway? And that's kind of a dumb question because childhood's always been here, but childhood has gone through changes. And, we know from some times throughout human history, the Industrial Revolution, that children the government almost had to come in and save children. They almost became like slaves. They were. So they had to put in child labor laws and stuff like that because of abuses that were going on. But even back in the time of Jesus, Jesus recognizes, he talks about, you Pharisees remind me of the little kids that are playing out in the street. First of all, they're playing wedding, and they're playing the flute, and then they're playing funeral. But you don't want to have any part of either one of them. But the simple fact that Jesus refers to children as just children playing in the marketplace. They're just kids. So kids have always been kids if we let them be kids. All right, now let me time out here. Who's got comments? Nick and Debbie.
When you're talking about, really trying to bring up who the best, make them like the best at their sport ever, that kind of stuff, the child prodigies. And you and Chris would probably have better examples of this than I can think of, but I know if you think of like LeBron, he was a great basketball player, but he was also a football player at least. I don't know if he played other sports. Michael Jordan was basketball, baseball. I don't know if he played other sports and stuff too, but not parents who just put them locked in a, basketball gymnasium and only play basketball their entire life. And it's not. But I'm sure there's parents who have tried that, and they're not remembered as the best basketball players in the world.
Okay. I wonder sometimes if we really could peel back and look into the life of somebody that has been in such an excelling or an excelled environment. And maybe, like, I don't know much about LeBron, but I wonder, he grew up in a broken home, didn't he? I wonder if this was self-imposed, that he just was going to be great, he loved the sport, he spent all of his, or if there was any kind of a regimentation. Sometimes you see, like, sometimes in sports, we're seeing more and more, I noticed this in the Major League Baseball, you hear names that you think, hey, that guy had a father that played ball. Tito Francona is an example of that, his dad. Michael Brantley. Michael Brantley is a professional athlete, and his father was a professional athlete, and you just wonder what kind of regimen, if you could look at it, would Michael Brantley say, oh man, I don't even remember childhood. From the time my dad got a hold of me when I was little, we were working on baseball stuff all the time. Or if he would say, no, my dad gave me a very healthy environment, he let me play different sports. He didn't even make me say I have to play baseball. You just wonder about that. Debbie?
Well, I was just going to comment on the last speaker about feelings and emotions. I think parents and the outside world give kids too many responsibilities or keep on them too many things, and they can't discern it yet. They use it the wrong way.
I'm with you there. That's part of why I feel the need to share this. I think sometimes we overload the kids and we rob them of something, a part of childhood that is, what does it mean to frolic? F-R-O-L-I-C. Can anybody give us a definition of frolic? Oh, you can use your phones to do it, can't you? Go ahead. Get your phone and tell us what it means to frolic, Vic.
Yeah, when I hear frolic, I think of somebody just dancing around in the weeds. They're not really got anything planned or they're just.
I think that captures it. I think it's hard to talk about frolic without somehow bringing up the word carefree.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that our kids do enough of that today. I'm not sure that our young ones are raised in a carefree environment. Jan?
We was talking about these technologies and children. As a helicopter I'm fearful for electronics because these predators can get past the best security systems. These people that have everything come to a surprise when they find out their children are being attacked by predators. Right in their own home, right in the middle of their living room, and clueless. It's scary.
Good comment. Anybody else? Phyllis?
I like to think about what Ron Howard, the actor and director, said about his dad. When he was going to play Obie on Andy Griffith, his dad told me, he says, if you want to do it, okay. If you don't want to do it, it's okay too. He didn't pressure him into it, he just, he said, you don't have to do it if you don't want to.
Well, that's a good point, and I wonder sometimes if we allow, or do we rationalize that they're not capable of discerning what's the best thing for them to do, so I'm going to choose what they're going to do. I wish Brenda was here this morning. Brenda and Sean have done a really good job of raising some outstanding kids in not only academics but also in sports. But we went and watched Joshua play soccer the other night, Mark and I did. They ended up losing, and there was nothing really to brag about on the part. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. Josh didn't score any big points, or he didn't make but somehow we got to talking about they not only support Josh there, but they go to the Friday night football games. And La Brea is really good this year. Kind of a unique season. But they go because Josh and Dylan are in the band. And I'm asking them did they choose to be in the band? And actually, Brenda was saying, well, I told them that you guys are going to be in the band, whether you want to be or not. And once they got in band, they loved it. Now, we never had that discussion with my parents. I don't ever remember. I lived in a world, first of all, maybe with 4 kids, we didn't always have the luxury of having excess money for all kinds of things. Some of you may have been in that same category. But I look back on my childhood and I think I had a carefree life. But there are times when I want to lead a song that I think, boy, I sure could have used some music stuff. Maybe my parents should have kicked me and said, you're going to take a band, at least for a couple of years. So I missed out on something, but some of the things I enjoyed. I think I had about as frolicking a childhood as anybody could ever have in a good, healthy way. And not that my parents didn't know what was going on, but it was just a great, great environment. Nick?
I feel like today, Haley was just bringing up how computers and stuff, really start to reprogram a child's brain. It's not just that they're having free
Yeah, the
time.
verdict's out on that too. I mean, we already know some bad things that are happening.
So, I feel like as parents, we have to be really diligent. If we just let them play or do what they want, with having technology be so readily available, or like they just want to grow up playing PlayStation or Xbox, or they have to be really diligent to say that you have to go experience these other things or go do these other things, because it's so easy to find comfort in technology. There's been really good studies about the little, there's like the daddy baby, there's
little videos that are
repetitive, and they actually make a child's brain crave it. It's addicting to a child's brain. They do opening things, and so they keep thinking they get rewarded over and over for watching, so it becomes an addiction a literal addiction that they want to watch over and over. So as parents, I feel like we have to almost
Police that.
structure it to make sure they're not being addicted.
All right, look, we've got to stop here. We don't have any sergeant at arms this morning, and it's 5 till. It just snuck up on me, and I see people in the foyer waiting there. So we'll continue this next week and start with adolescents, and if there's anybody that wants to take over and talk about teenagers, I'm willing. You want to do that, Deb?
I just wanted to say, you talked about child choosing. When my two were in high school, they were in the band. Then it ended up where they had to be in the marching band if they wanted to play anything. I gave them a choice of either band or Camp Johnson. And they chose Camp Johnson.
That's part of the trouble too sometimes is this specialization almost makes you make a choice between church-related things and school-related things. Okay, thank you. We'll pick up there so you know where we're at. So let it ferment a little bit and come back and we'll talk about it.